Thank you very much for being here. I'm Kirk Everest. I'm a member of the Department of Communication, Media, and Theater here at Austin College, and I'm also on the campus planning committee for this event. I am delighted to welcome you all here this morning. Our program will begin in just a moment. Please join me right now in welcoming Austin College President Marjorie Haas and our guests. Thank you.
We don't like these events to feel too over-rehearsed. We like a sense of spontaneity and preparation. I am just delighted to welcome all of you here. This is a tremendously exciting event for Austin College. It is our annual convocation that honors our Posey Leadership Award recipient. For us to be able to make an award like this is a tremendous gift, and the Posey Leadership Award, as I think many of you know, recognizes an individual who's had a significant impact on the world through service and through leadership. Those are clearly values that we lift up at Austin College, and to be able to bring national and international leaders to campus to inspire us is truly a blessing. The award bears the name of Sally and Lee Posey. They have been tremendous supporters of the college and of our students through support of the Posey Leadership Institute and through endowing this leadership award. Lee was the founder of Palm Harbor Homes and a dear friend to many who are here today. And he passed away in 2008. His widow, Sally, remains a close friend of the college. And my predecessor, Oscar Page, President Emeritus, worked very closely with Lee to fulfill his vision of establishing this award. And it is a tremendous honor to be part of this annually. You know that our guest today is Mr. Salman Khan. He's the founder and executive director of the Khan Academy. And in a few moments, you're going to have the privilege of learning a lot more about him and about his work. To introduce him, I am not introducing him. I am introducing the person who will introduce him. So if you're following along on your programs, you'll know just right where we are. And I get to make this introduction because our introducer is an alum of Austin College, and that is always happy to welcome our alums back. Dr. Al Hambrick, class of 1979, will be with us today. Dr. Hambrick has devoted his life to education. He has spent 34 years in the field of education and is serving his 7th year as superintendent of the Sherman Independent School District. So in addition to being an alum and a colleague to many of us, he has also been responsible for the education of one of my children and many, many other of your children here today. He also is an Austin College parent. He sent 2 of his 3 children to Austin College. His 3rd child, I think, also had a fine education. In addition to his work as superintendent, Al currently serves, he's recently elected as the state president of the Texas Association of Supervision and Curriculum Development. He serves as a member of the Texas Association of School Administrators and on the Texas Region 25 Music Executive Committee. So please join me in welcoming our fellow kangaroo, Dr. Al Hambrick.
Good morning. If you are among us this morning and you're an Austin College alum and you have children, make sure that you send them to Austin College. Just want to make sure I put that plug in. 2 out of 3 is not bad, but maybe we should have sent 3 out of 3. It is a great honor for me this morning on behalf of Austin College, Dr. Haas, and the Sherman and community, as well as the surrounding areas, to have this opportunity to first of all, meet Mr. Khan, and also to have the opportunity to introduce him. About 9 years ago, it's my understanding that he began his journey of revolutionizing the thinking of many of us about the potential of technology and the potential of online learning and education. Through his leadership and his vision of what education could be and how it can be incorporated with technology, he has developed a digital technology platform that is enhancing learning not only in Sherman and our area, but around the globe. He is the current founder and executive director of the Khan Academy, a nonprofit education platform that provides free, high-quality education to anyone, anywhere in the world. It also provides a self-paced software system with unlimited access for more than 3,000 instructional videos, with over 6 million unique students per month. And we're very proud to say that in the Sherman Independent School District, I mentioned to Mr. Khan that our students have direct access through our website to his resources. And not only for our students, but what I've found is that there are many adults who look for ways of helping their children during the PM of the day when they don't have access to the teacher. And we're so thankful that he's provided this resource for all of us, and that we have now a teacher in the living room that's provided by the resources that he's granted to all of us, and it's all free. So we thank him very much. Thank you very much for all that you're doing worldwide for our students in Sherman and surrounding areas, and we're just delighted that you're here with us today. Mr. Khan is also the author of the book, The One World Schoolhouse Education Reimaged. And we're also thankful for the opportunities to read that book and share in his information in there. I would ask that you would join me in welcoming the 2013 Austin College Posey Leadership Award recipient and our special guest today, Mr. Salman Khan.
No, it's a huge honor to be here, and actually, you know, starting yesterday, I started meeting many members of the community here at Austin College, and I'm sad that I'm going to have to leave tomorrow. So it's a very exciting thing. Well, just to start off, whenever I speak to any group of folks, I always like to get a sense of how much they know about Khan Academy or anything else. I'm curious, how many of y'all use Khan Academy or have used Khan Academy? And oh, very good, very good. I hope you got your money's worth. You got your, and how many of you, if you're willing to raise your hand, aren't familiar with Khan Academy or would like to learn more? And okay, so there's a few folks, so this will be of use. So what I'll start off with is, you know, and those of you who are familiar with us know that a lot of the press has written about this collection of videos that I started making for my cousins, actually, you know, many years ago. So I'll show what those videos look like, but then the rest of this talk, I really just want to talk about how all of this got started and really where we see Khan Academy going, because we think it can go well beyond, and it frankly already has gone well beyond just having videos. So with that, let me just show you a little montage of what the videos look like.
We could integrate over the surface, and the notation usually is a capital sigma. All of these interactions are just due to the gravity over interstellar, or almost you could call it intergalactic. This animal's fossils are only found in this area of South America, a nice clean band here. Notice this is an aldehyde, and it's an alcohol. Is there 30 million plus the $20 million from the American manufacturer. They create the Committee of Public Safety, which sounds like a very nice committee.
This is not Eve.
No, Botticelli's portrayed the ancient goddess of love.
This is 6 times 6 times 6, or 216.
I'm told the humidity makes it feel hotter. Why is this?
Excellent question, LeBron.
Let's just make it 11.
Play with the pendulum and get a feel for how it moves.
Function as a bridge rectifier.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
If this does not blow your mind, then you have no emotion.
Very good. I can always tell the intelligence of an audience based on how much they appreciate Euler's identity. So you guys have done very well. So just to give a snapshot of where we are now, and this is all surreal on so many levels for me because it's really started from literally a closet. We've, as was introduced, 6 million students every month. They've done over 1 billion exercises. I'll show in a second what an exercise looks like on the Khan Academy. It's being used in 20,000 classrooms, reaching 400,000 students that way. They've watched 240 million videos. But what I want to do now is take a step back and talk a little bit about how all this started. Some of y'all know a little bit of this story, but maybe not all the details. If we rewind to 2004, where, as was introduced, this whole journey began, I was 1 year out of business school. I had just gotten married, and I was in Boston at the time, and I had some family, and I was working as an analyst at a hedge fund. And I had some family visiting me after my wedding. They were visiting me in Boston, and it was my cousin Nadia, her two younger brothers, and my aunt and uncle, her parents. And they were with me in Boston, and it came out in conversation. I was just talking to her mom that Nadia, who was 12 years old, entering into 7th grade at the time, was having trouble with mathematics. I had trouble believing this. She seemed like a bright young woman. We shared a certain amount of DNA. No. And so when Nadia came into the room, I asked her about this, and she said, well, I've been trying hard. I actually have decent grades, but I took a placement exam, and I just bombed it. And I said, well, what was the problem? And she says, unit conversion, kilometers, miles, ounces, gallons, whatever else. And I immediately told her, I was like, look, Nadia, I've had conversations with you this entire trip. I'm 100% convinced that you could overcome unit conversion. And I think she's had this type of a pep talk before, and I could tell she was rolling her eyes inside of her head. And so I said, well, and that kind of triggered me to take up the challenge. I said, no. How about if you're willing to, we work together on this? And she's like, yeah, but how will we do it? Well, you go back to New Orleans, where she was where I grew up as well. And every day after work for me, after school for you, we'll get on the phone and I'll try to tutor you. And we've soon found on Yahoo Instant Messenger, there was this thing called Yahoo Doodle, where you could write and the other person could write. And I got Nadia a little $80 pen tablet so that we could see each other's writing virtually. And we started working together. And long story short, that she started off completely demoralized, completely thought that her brain isn't wired for math. It took a little while just to get her to engage, but about a month into it, things started to finally click. I would say about 2 months into it, not only was she up to where her class was, but she was starting to get a little ahead of her class. And at that point, I became what I call a tiger cousin. And I called up her school, and I said, I really think Nadia should retake the placement exam or be put into the faster math track. And they said, well, who are you? I said, I'm her cousin. But, and I point this out because what I saw with, I guess, the very first student of the Khan Academy is a story that we're seeing over and over and over again. I'll talk more about that in the presentation. But Nadia, the same girl who entering into 7th grade thought she was bad at math, thought that she couldn't get unit conversion, thought that she just not how her brain worked. By the time she was in 10th grade, a sophomore in high school, she was taking calculus at the local university. And we're going to see this over and over again. People who thought that they were just no good at math end up actually becoming quite good. And so I was excited. It was kind of it felt like it worked with this one cousin. Maybe this was just a fluke. So I started working with her younger brothers. Then you fast forward about 2 years. And over that 2 years, a couple of things happened. My background was in computer science. And I was always kind of intrigued by, hey, can you write computer programs that can help people learn math? And so I'd written a little thing that would give them practice problems, give my cousins practice problems, and so that I could keep track of what they were doing. I put a database behind it. And you fast forward to 2006, a word had gotten around in the family that free tutoring was happening. And I found myself tutoring every day after work between 10 to 15 cousins and family friends around the country. And I had this little software tool, and I remember, and by this point, I had moved out to Northern California. The firm, I'm using the word firm very generously. It was my boss, who was our portfolio manager, and his dog. The dog was the chief economist. And we actually had business cards printed. We had to get 3 sets of cards. But my boss's wife got a job as a law professor at Stanford Law School, and so we moved out to Northern California. And in Northern California, this is in fall of 2006, I was showing a friend from college, I was showing him this software tool that I had been using with my cousins. And then all my friends knew that I had this big, crazy tutoring project with all of my family. And I was showing him this stuff, and he's like, this is really cool, but how are you handling 10, 15 kids on a regular basis? And I said, frankly, it's difficult. What I could do with Nadia or even Arman and Ali, her brothers, I can't do now with 10 or 15 kids. And he recommended, he said, well, I don't know, this might be a crazy idea, but why don't you make some tutorials, some videos, and stick them up on YouTube, and this might help you scale a little bit. And I immediately said, no. YouTube is for cats playing piano. It's not for serious mathematics. But I went home that weekend, and I got over the idea that it wasn't my idea, and it's hard for someone with an MBA to do that, but I gave it a shot, and those first few videos were in kind of basic algebra, pre-algebra topics like that, and what I started telling my cousins is, hey, look, if you want to review something or if you want to cover something and I'm not around, these things might be helpful. You could watch them, and then when we have our tutorials, you can ask questions. We'll have more kind of a productive use of time then. And after about a couple of months of this, I had about 30 videos out. I asked them, I was like, well, what do you think? And they somewhat backhandedly told me that they prefer me on YouTube than in person. And looking at that from a positive angle, it actually made a ton of sense. On one level, it's completely non-intuitive because they had access to me. Why would they like a video more than me? But what they were saying, and I've talked to them more, and obviously since then we've talked to a lot of students about this, is that when you're learning, it can be very stressful. Oftentimes you've forgotten something from a few years ago. You're a ninth grader, but you forgot some of your pre-algebra or your arithmetic. It's embarrassing to raise your hand in an algebra class and say, wait, I forgot about exponents, or I forgot about how you multiply decimals. And the videos are kind of a safe environment. They don't judge you. You can pause. You can repeat as necessary. A lot of times when a class is happening or the tutorials with me were happening, you weren't necessarily completely invested because other stuff was going on in your life. You had other homework. Who knows what it might be. Now you can engage with the content when you need to. The first time you're learning something, I mean, we've all experienced it. I still experience this at work. Sometimes I'll go to one of the engineers at Khan Academy, and I was like, okay, so exactly how are we measuring this aspect of the learning? And they'll say, oh, it's a really easy algorithm, Sal. You see, we just take this, and we measure it this way, and then it goes to this system, and it gets checked out. And do you get it? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I get it. And because you don't want to be judged there, you don't want to waste the other person's time. But I wish I had him as a video and I could watch it over again and try to make sure I understood what he just said. So I took that as positive feedback, and so I just kept making more and more videos. And you fast forward, a few months into it, it soon became clear that people who were not my cousins started watching. And at first, it would just be very basic comments would show up on YouTube, thank you, or this really helped, or this helped me pass my geometry exam, or whatever it might be. And even that was a pretty big deal. I don't know how much time most of y'all spend on YouTube, but most of the comments aren't quite positive. So I viewed that as a small victory. But then it started getting kind of really crazy letters, I'm leaving the military, I want to go back to college, but I need to learn algebra again, and I never really learned it well the first time. Khan Academy was the only way I was able to re-engage. I got a letter, actually several letters, but I remember the first one, and I brought my wife over. I was like, this is incredible. This family had several children with learning disabilities and was writing that this is what is helping them keep up with their class. And I remember in particular they said, our entire family prays for your entire family every night. I mean, put this in perspective, I was working at a hedge fund. This is not there wasn't a lot of prayer. Well, maybe there was, but for a different reason. And so it was a pretty incredible experience for me. It was really, you fast forward to 2008, 2009, I was racing home every night, even at work. Sometimes I would kind of be working on Khan Academy, reading the letters, working on videos and whatever else. And, not even at that point, not quite realizing that it was going to take over my life. I did set it up as a not-for-profit at that point, thinking that maybe someone will give a grant to it or something. Maybe I could find other people to help work on it. But by 2009, it frankly just became too much. It was taking over my life. At that point, I think it was about 50,000 students were using the site every month. And so I sat down with my wife, and we looked at our finances. We had some savings for our down payment on our house, but it seemed like we had enough that in theory I could kind of try this out for a year. It seemed like there was so much traction, so many people were using it, and the way I thought about it is, the social return. This is a not-for-profit, so the social return on investment here is really through the roof. If we can continue to produce these materials, build the software, the interactivity, whatever it might be, kids around or adults or people, learners around the world could continue to learn. It could be millions of people, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. And so I quit my job to kind of focus on Khan Academy full-time. And I think in any entrepreneurial story, and I think some of y'all will have either gone through something like this or will go through something like this, whenever you try to start anything, whether it's a not-for-profit or for-profit, you almost need to be delusional a little bit. You have to be a little bit overly naive, and I was. I assumed that, hey, these foundations, they're always talking about education. They're definitely going to fund this. I mean, if they can just support me, I can keep making these videos. I already have all this evidence of people using it. But it was an unusual thing, and a few months went by, and I'd probably pitched to 50 different foundations, and I really wasn't getting any response. And while that was happening, I was getting a $5 donation here and there, $10, some of it might have been from some of y'all, and that was helping a little bit. But then you fast forward 9 months, we're now in the spring of 2010, and I was frankly quite nervous. I mean, our son had been born, we had moved into a 4-bedroom, it was a slightly larger, we were paying a lot more in rent, digging into our savings. I had some weak moments where I started updating my resume. It was right when all of that was happening, May of 2010, that all of a sudden a $10,000 donation came in. So I immediately look at who this was. It came with an email. Her name was Ann Doer. I immediately email her back, and I say, thank you so much. This was the largest donation that the Khan Academy has ever received. If we were a physical school, you would now have a building named after you, which I think is quite inexpensive. I don't think 10,000, it's more than 10. Maybe 10,000 might get a bench of some kind. But But Ann, she said, well, I'm local. She's in the neighboring town. She said, I really like what you're doing. I'd love to learn more about it. Let's have lunch. So literally a week later, I found myself with Ann at an Indian buffet in downtown Palo Alto. And she said, well, what are you trying to do here? And I told her, well, the mission statement is a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And Ann said, well, that's ambitious. How do you plan on doing that? And I said, well, I've already been making, by this point I probably had close to 1,000 videos. I've made all of these videos. I want to keep making videos. We could translate them eventually or have them redone in other languages. But I also showed her kind of screenshots of the software stuff that I was working on. I said, look, it's not just about the videos. I want to create an interactive platform, problem sets, feedback, tools for teachers, ways for students to interact. Maybe eventually we could have simulations on the sites, ways for people to experiment. Who knows? Just keep pushing the envelope of what's possible. And Ann said, it's very ambitious, but you've actually done a lot. It seems like you're well on your way to doing this. How are you supporting yourself? And in as proud of a way as possible, I said, I'm not. and Ann kind of nodded, and she said, well, this was really great chatting. And so we left. I got into my car. Ann got on her bicycle, and I drove home. And literally 10 minutes later, I was driving into my driveway, and I got a text message from Ann. And it said, you really need to be supporting yourself. I've just wired you $100,000. So that was a good day. And if Ann sends me a text message, I might have to take it, because So, and as we'll see, actually, her text messages continue to be part of the story. So that was a big day, and I always talk about it, because that was the day that I said, at least for the time being, I could continue to do this. But it was really the beginning of a whole cascade of crazy events. You fast forward 2 months, it's now summer of 2010, I was running a little summer camp for middle school students. I was kind of this virtual teacher guy, but I was curious, okay, if lecture can happen at a student's own time and pace, and even some of the exercises, what could you do with a physical environment to really capture, to make it fun, do game simulations? And so I was doing this one simulation where I had 6 of the middle school students playing a game of Risk, And then I had the other 20 trading securities based on the outcome of the game of Risk. It's a very good game. I don't know if y'all have an econ class. I recommend it. One kid invented shorting on his own. I told him I could introduce him to some people. Well, right while that was going on, literally a trading floor of middle school students, I got another series of text messages from Ann, which I now take very seriously. And it was kind of cryptic. It was this whole series. I mean, I don't know if you've ever tried to communicate it substantively in a bunch of text messages, but it said, at the Aspen Ideas Festival in Aspen, Colorado, Bill Gates is in the main pavilion, on stage now, last 5 minutes talking about Khan Academy. And I didn't know what to make of this. I didn't know so I boot the nearest 7th grader off of a computer, and I start seeing if there's like evidence of this, of like this thing that Ann seems to be referring to. And I found people tweeting about it. I found people already starting to blog about it. After a couple of hours, I found actual footage of the event. And it was literally Bill Gates on stage with Walter Isaacson talking about how he uses Khan Academy for himself. He uses it with his kids. I mean, it was hard to believe, but it was right there in front of me, which then left me in a very awkward situation. In fact, it was a little bit of a scary situation. My brain immediately said, those videos were for Nadia, not Bill Gates. This is, I might have to review some of what I said. And then I started to get into this weird, bizarre thing of, well, what do I do next? Do I call him? I'm assuming he's not listed. And they left me in that very awkward situation for about 2 weeks. 2 weeks into it, I was literally in my closet recording a video, and then all of a sudden my cell phone rings. It's from Seattle. I stop what I'm doing. I answer the phone, and hello, and this is Larry Cohen. I'm Bill Gates' chief of staff. You might have heard that Bill's a fan. Yeah, I heard that. And if you're free in the next few weeks, Bill, we would love to fly you up to Seattle and figure out how we can support you. And I was looking at my calendar for the month at that moment, completely blank. So I said, yeah, I've got to cut my nails on Wednesday, but other than that, I think I can go meet Bill Gates. Long story short, the meeting went well. They decided to support us. Right around the same time, some folks at Google had reached out, and it was crazy because all of these were kind of independent, unconnected events. They had reached out. A lot of them were using Khan Academy with their kids, or even a lot of they were using Khan Academy to understand things like the financial crisis and economics. And so they also wanted to support us. So by fall of 2010, we were kind of up and running. We had the resources that we could literally get office space and start hiring a team. And a lot of what we started working on is this right over here. Some of y'all actually might have used it even. We call this our knowledge map. Each of those circles there, this is kind of the interactive part of Khan Academy. And this actually predated the videos. And the first videos were just to complement this based on my friend's suggestion. And each circle there is a concept in mathematics. You already saw the videos. The videos go much broader than mathematics. There's videos there in art history and in organic chemistry and whatever else. Right now, the interactive stuff is primarily math. But the paradigm is very simple. Each one's a concept in mathematics. At the top of this tree is very basic arithmetic. As you show proficiency, it keeps moving you down to more and more advanced concepts. And it's kind of common sense. It's the way a video game would work. It's the way, if you're in a martial art, you do the yellow belt exam, then you become a green belt, and then you keep progressing. But the one thing I point out is that this is not the way that a traditional academic model works. In a traditional academic model, what you have is you group all the students together, usually by age. You move them together at a set pace. You have lecture, homework, lecture, homework, lecture, homework, and then every now and then you give them an exam. And on that exam, some students might get an A, some get a B, some get a C. So, it might be an exam on, let's say it's an exam on exponents, and there's some students in the class who got a C. They didn't know 20% of the material. What we do in our traditional academic model is we say, okay, well, the class has got to move on. Even though we've identified that weakness in basic exponents, the class is now going to move on to negative exponents or fractional exponents or logarithms, a concept that the only way that you're going to be able to understand is if you've actually mastered the more basic ones. So despite recognizing that deficiency, you then try to build on top of it. And the analogy I draw is imagine if you were going to build a house that way, where you're going to lay the foundation and you get the contractor in and you say, look, You know, the state's told me I have 3 weeks to build this foundation. You got to just do what you can. The contractor does what they can. Maybe some of the supplies don't show up. Maybe it rains while they're trying to build. You bring the inspector in after 2-3 weeks. The inspector says, I don't know, concrete's still wet over there. That part right over there is not quite up to code. I'd give it an 80%. You say, oh, great, that's a C. That's passing. Let's build the first floor. And then you build the first floor, same exact process. You fix the time that the contractor has, regardless of what actually might happen. The contractor does the best they can. You bring the inspector in, 70%. Oh, well, we got to move on. Let's build the second floor. And you keep doing that. And then all of a sudden, while you're building the fourth floor and the whole thing collapses, the reaction, and this is the reaction we see in kind of the traditional school system, is, oh, well, maybe our contractors aren't good enough. Or maybe we need more inspection. But the reality is that, you know, I mean, maybe your contractor was fine. Maybe the inspectors were fine, but you were identifying gaps in students' knowledge and then completely ignoring them. You were identifying gaps in the structure, but then completely ignoring them. And so what we say is, instead of holding fixed when a student learns something and how long they have to learn it, and the variable is how well they learn it, the grade, the A, B, C, D, let's do it the other way around. Let's make variable how long someone has to learn it and when they learn it, essentially cater to a student's pace, make sure that they don't have any gaps in their knowledge. And the fixed thing is that they have a very high level of understanding. Now this right over here, just to give us a sense, gives a sense of what some of these exercises look like. Some of them are more traditional problems. I like to show this one because it's like Montessori for calculus. It's, you know, you can change the slope of the tangent line at any point. You get an intuition, hopefully, for what a derivative is. It's the slope of the tangent line. And also shows that you can start to do stuff in this form factor that you couldn't have done with the traditional textbook or even with a traditional chalkboard. And the videos are there to complement it. Now, when all of this was starting, this was fall of 2010, at this point, just assume that Khan Academy was this thing that was going to operate outside of the traditional school system. It's, you know, the supplemental thing. But right when this was happening, a local school district, Los Altos, California, reached out, and we met with the school board, and they said, well, we're intrigued by what you're doing, read an article about it. What would you do if you could do anything with a fifth grade math classroom? And so we thought this was just pie in the sky thinking. We said, well, look, you know, and I had tried it a little bit with the summer camp that I had run. I was like, well, we don't think the classroom should be focused on lecture anymore. We think a lot of that can happen at a student's own time and pace. We think a lot of the problem sets could happen at the student's time and pace. So what I would have is every student work at their own time, their own pace, master concepts before moving on. And I would equip the teacher with dashboards, with information, analytics, so they can see where every student in the class is. And the model that we would use in a classroom is that when human beings go there, they should interact with other human beings. That's the value of having a physical classroom. And to us, that would mean peer-to-peer instruction. That would mean the teacher looking at a dashboard, seeing who's strong, who's weak in certain subjects. If someone's struggling with something, that the teacher can then do a very focused intervention. They can pair students together, or they could see that the students are all ready for a project, and so they could do a project together, or they could have a conversation about something. And somewhat surprising to us, the district said, oh, this is completely in line with what we believe. This is differentiated instruction, mastery-based instruction. We want to do it. So they started a pilot, 2 fifth grade classes, 2 seventh grade classes, and we were up and running. And you know, there's a bunch of dashboards that we gave the teachers, and a lot of it was frankly designed by the teachers. This wasn't a one-way conversation. It was a lot of the teachers telling us what they needed, and continues to be a lot of what the teachers are telling us what they need. But I'd like to show this. This is just one of the dashboards that the teachers get. The horizontal axis here is just days on the site. The vertical axis is just a raw count of the modules completed, literally counting how many of those circles on that knowledge map the students have shown proficiency in. Each line here is a student in the class. And so you see, just like, frankly, any math class, right from the beginning, there's some students who progress really fast. These are the kids that, you know, by day 10, they're already at, 25, 30 modules completed. Then, and in a traditional math class, you say, oh, those are the gifted students, those are the honor students. Then there's some kids in the middle, and then you see some kids who are a little bit slow to start. And usually around middle school, and this was what was happening to Nadia, you know, you might give a snapshot assessment, and you say, okay, let's put those in advance, let's put these kids in a remedial track. But what we're seeing is if you let every student work at their own pace, and we're seeing this in public schools, private schools, affluent neighborhoods, poor neighborhoods, charter schools, everywhere where we've tried this, we're seeing that if you let every student work at their own pace, those same students that you thought were a little bit below average, and this blue student is one of them, and oftentimes you think they're below average, but when you look at the data, it's because even though it's a 7th grade math class, they're having trouble with basic arithmetic. We've seen algebra students who didn't know their multiplication tables. But if you let them address those weaknesses in a way that's safe for them and fill in those gaps, those same students, and this blue student is one of them, that same student that you thought was below average by day 10 ends up becoming the second best student in the class. And we're seeing that over and over and over again. This is over 2 months, and we're now starting to see it over 2 years, and imagine what could happen over your entire academic career. You know, the one thing that we remind ourselves is we're doing all this stuff in schools, and there's 20,000 classrooms, 400,000 students in schools, but that's still less than 10% of our entire user base. And what we remind ourselves, and I think what drives our team to work on this, is just how many people there are on the planet who have potential and who are just looking for some type of a tool that allows them to tap into that potential. And this next video was sent by one of those folks, and it really inspired our team. And this is kind of an edited down version of that first video that Mark Halberstadt had sent, but it reminds us kind of how much potential there really is out there.
My name is Mark Halberstadt. Growing up, I was really always a C student. I pretty much thought that the only thing I was good enough to do in college was major in music. But I sort of almost felt that it was more I was getting it because I was terrible at everything else. Really what I wanted to do was electrical engineering. And the last thing that I remember completely not getting was trig identities. So I went to YouTube and I did a search for trig identities, and the Khan Academy was the first thing that popped up. Watched a bunch of videos in the trig playlist to kind of get caught up to speed. I watched all the videos in the calculus playlist. I watched all the videos in the physics playlist. Watched a lot of videos on arithmetic. I took a leap and I decided to go back to school and went to Temple University, majored in electrical engineering, getting a second bachelor's. And keep in mind, I was really a straight C student growing up. And I just finished this year, first year back in college, I got a 4.0 GPA for the entire year. I got perfect scores on both of my calc final exams and also on my chemistry final exam. I ended calculus, chemistry, both calculus classes, Calc 1 and 2, and chemistry with an average higher than 100%. There are some Khan Academy videos that I probably listened to the same concept over 20 or 30 times. And there is no tutor in the world I could have paid to have sat next to me and repeated the same thing over 20 or 30 times without at least them getting a little bit judgmental, or at least them thinking like, oh, well, this guy really is never going to get this concept and he should just give up. Where the understanding really happened was watching those videos and also working through the Khan Academy software and everything. The impact for me in my life, I really see it growing exponentially over the next 20 or 30 years. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
And we've gotten updates from Mark Halberstadt. He's now a junior, still 4.0, so it's something seems to be going well there. You know, the other thing, and this has probably been in some of your minds, and if some of y'all, I think I've been talking to as many of y'all who've read the book, and I talk about this in the book. I mean, this started off for my cousins. We're in, you know, the world that we all live in the developed world. I guess New Orleans, some people would debate that, but anyway, that's it. But we lived in the developed world. We live in the English-speaking world. But you know, it's something that I thought about, and it's being put into our into our attention more and more. Is that as useful as this might be for Mark Halberstadt or for Los Altos or even underserved parts of our, you know, there's some schools in Oakland that are using us. It could be that much more of a game changer for the developing world, for outside of the U.S. And you know, in those environments, you usually don't have the resources. Even if you have the resources, it's difficult to find teachers who might have the expertise. Even if you have that, the kids themselves are all over their skill levels are all over the place. Many of them have to help the family, they have to work, whatever else. And so what's been happening, and you know, this is not us, this is other groups have started taking our content and bringing it in computer labs or offline on thumb drives or DVDs, whatever it might be. They've been bringing it to all sorts of places around the world. And each of these stories is pretty exciting in their own right, but the one that is, I mean, that those kids in India there, if you look closely, a lot of them aren't wearing shoes. But if you look at the top right one, that's at least probably the most exciting story I've heard. You know, I used to give talks like this about 2 years ago, and I say, you know, and who knows, one day people might use this in Mongolia, just thinking of the furthest place on the planet I could think of. And about a year ago, I get an email with a link to a YouTube video from Mongolia. And it came from this young girl named Zaya. And she wrote, how she likes Khan Academy. I immediately look on the video, and I'll show a little bit of her video in a second. And it talked about how she likes Khan Academy, she uses it, and all of this. And I was like, oh, this is great. My promises of it being used in Mongolia came true. But on top of that, but I assumed, okay, well, she must be a middle class, upper middle class girl. Her English was quite good. She obviously had access to it. She was able to watch the videos and had access to a computer and some type of internet connection. But then I read the email, and it turned out that there was a group of engineers who literally were using their vacation time to travel through East Asia, and especially Mongolia, and set up computer labs in orphanages throughout Mongolia. And so what you see on that top right there, those are actual pictures of orphan Mongolian girls using Khan Academy in a computer lab set up by these engineers who were using their vacation time. And that picture on the right is Zaya. And that by itself was kind of epic and sci-fi for me. I mean, that was a neat idea. But it's now gotten even crazier. Zaya herself has gotten so into it that she is now our #1 producer of content in the Mongolian language. She has essentially now become the teacher for her people. And so in line with this idea of what is possible international, we already have, as it was introduced, we actually have, if you include the art history videos and everything else, we have about 4,000 videos in English on Khan Academy. And we have a very a vigorous translation project going on. And I shouldn't even say translation. It's often redone in another language, where we have 7,000 videos already in over 12 languages. The goal is that the entire platform is going to be internationalized, not just the videos, but the exercises, the feedback, the dashboards. And to get a sense of what that's like, this next video has a montage of some of the internationalized videos, plus a little snippet from Zaya a couple of years ago.
Sí decimos que bueno, esta fue la primera cara y esta fue la segunda cara. तो ये जो है जो ऑब्जर्वर यहाँ कहीं बैठा होगा तो उसको ये इमेज जो है
那个角就是正弦数值对应的角 мы можем обе стороны разделить на b plus a.
Également sur la dernière leçon, שהנקודה בשאלה. אז למעשה זה רק השינוי בערך y.
و سنگریزه رو ما اگه بدیم به نونوایی چیزی
এখন দুই কার্বন যুক্ত অ্যাসিটাইল কোএ উৎপন্ন হয়
auf der Zahlengerade zeichnen. Hier ist meine Zahlengerade.
Mas é claro que ele fez muitas e muitas e muitas outras coisas importantes.
I'm Zaya from Mongolia. Your videos are so interesting and funny. Make more lessons.
I watch that when I get lazy. It keeps me in line. So the one thing I want to stress, I mean, it started with me and my cousins, and it was me operating out of a closet. But now we've grown quite substantially with support from a lot of folks, and we're always looking for more support if anyone's feeling generous. But I always want to point out, it's not just me. We're a team, almost 40 folks now of educators, of engineers, of researchers, and it feels like we're kind of at a special time in history where you can, a lot of times, even when I was in college or before, people say, oh, you could go out there and do something, affect people around the world. And there's like kind of a cynical thing, oh, can I really do that? Is that really possible? But we are at a time where a very small group of people can actually go out and touch a lot of people out there. And what I point out is, over the last year, our team has averaged 25 folks or 24 folks, and we were able to reach 43 million people. And what I point out is if this was actually drawn to scale, if this bar is about a centimeter high, this bar right over here actually should be 20 kilometers high. It's a good unit conversion problem, just to bring it back home. So the original tagline there was just the necessities. Where there was just, but the general idea here is, and I tell this to the team and to our supporters and everyone is, and I read a lot of science fiction, as y'all probably tell, and the reason why I like science fiction is it challenges your assumption and it allows you to imagine what the world could be like. And what's exciting now is it really feels like we're living in the middle of a science fiction book. And I point out to our team that it's not a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be able to do something like this. This is a once-in-a-millennium opportunity. It's society's at an inflection point. That we have new tools at our disposal, and whenever we're at an inflection point, it's an opportunity for new institutions to emerge. And it was delusional when I was in 2007 sitting in my closet and filling out an IRS tax form and saying that our mission statement was a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And I was kind of dreaming of maybe Khan Academy could become one of these institutions. But it's becoming less delusional. And I genuinely believe now, and hopefully we're a part of this, that over the next 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years, this thing that we call education, that has historically been scarce and expensive and has been the determining factor between the haves and the have-nots, is no longer that determining factor. It's essentially available for everyone. It becomes a human right. It's like clean drinking water. It's like electricity. And the one thing I point out, I was telling some folks yesterday at a dinner, the same exact idea. Traditionally, you would look at what the middle class have, what a lot of us grew up with, what the affluent have, and you say, well, that's great, but that's expensive. The poor have nothing. Let's give them a cheap version of it. But what's exciting about this is we don't have to do that anymore. We can now look at what the affluent have. What are Bill Gates' kids using? And we can give Zaya not a cheap approximation of that. We can give those orphans in Mongolia the exact same resource. So with that, I'm just very excited about where the world can go. Thank you.